a really good question. We started thinking digital because we were really looking for something that could really, basically what we used to say was help put the Northeast tech scene on the map. You know, what was something that we could do that could really, and so what it was is I had a really accidental, I got invited to the TED conference in California, that's where it was at the time. And I came back from this event and thinking, my God, this is the kind of experience we need to create to kind of bring together creative, innovative, curious people, if you will, and as well as also inviting great speakers from around the world. And at the time, there was no TEDx program. We might have done that, and so we created Thinking Digital, our variant, effectively of TED, our homage to TED, if you will. And luckily for us, I mean, it eventually took off. The first couple of years was definitely it was a hard getting off the ground. Like any startup, it was hard getting off the ground. But then once people got the concept, and as you know, a lot of times it's not about the product. It's oftentimes about the communication, about helping people understand what it's about. And then by 2010, it was a kind of bona fide hit, if you will. The Guardian covered us as one of their top 100 media garden stories of that year. I think in 2012 we got picked up by Wired as one of their top 100 stories and things like that. And so people, it did kind of exactly what we hoped it would do, which is to kind of send a beacon out to within this community, but also in London, in Manchester, and elsewhere, that there's a lot happening here, and enough to support a conference like Thinking Digital. And the great thing is that it's only continued to be more and more true with every passing year. The future really is ultimately about, I think as I mentioned, we took it independent in 2012, so because the past few years has just been proving that it could survive without. I think for me it's around really helping to convene more and more of those curious, creative people. I mean, as I mentioned, we've now worked with sponsors to open up the program to, so startups are a classic example of the kind of people who, unfortunately, super creative, super innovative, they're trying to make it happen, but of course, typically they don't have a lot of money. So it's tough for them to sponsor or to pay as delegates. So we've got a startup program that allows about 20 startup founders to come and join us. We've got another one that we've been working on with Nigel Wright, the recruitment company, around what we call future talented leaders, around trying to get non-tech, non-digital people to experience this, because I think a lot of people go, it sounds interesting, but is it going to be too techy for me? And so we found that program, and that's really I'm hoping that this can just continue to grow in that way, where you're going to get a critical mass. And because we have had lots of people, more than half of the people now are repeat attendees, and so that we're trying to build that community. And then what you see is relationships, and you see, in fact, we've had marriages and babies come off the back of it as well, but also new startups and new business relationships and things like that. And so we'd love to see that just continue to grow. And also, I think last year we had about 20. I think we had 20 countries represented. So the whole part of it is around being a beacon that would bring people from Malaysia and South Africa and Germany and places like that, which is great to see. And we don't do any marketing in those countries. It just word of mouth and through social and through the interwebs, the word sort of spread. And so so that's the longer term plan, is to how can we continue to deepen our impact on what's happening here in the Northeast and the North. I'm really putting together, because I think between obviously what you guys are doing, what Sage have done, you've got, I know there's a lot of financial service related work that places like Accenture and HP are doing that, and Virgin Money, of course, have a good big operation here. There's still, and there's a lot of smaller firms as well in your space, and then they're not trying to develop a challenger bank. They're employing people that are probably pretty similar to the kind of people that you're looking for. That there's an argument that there really is a fintech cluster growing here in the Northeast, and I'd actually like to see us develop a bit of that identity, so that other people out there, particularly talented developers and otherwise, want to come and check out what the Northeast scene is all about. Tough, controversial. I'll just go off the top of my head. one that sticks out is a guy named Dan Lyons, and Dan is, I guess for me, my favorite speakers who are able to combine great content, but with typically great comedy, right? They typically they're very bright, but very funny at the same time, sort of thing. And Dan, he was at the time we worked with him, he was at Forbes magazine. He went on to Newsweek, but he's now had a huge best-selling book around his time working in startups called Disrupted, and so it's been great to see him. Another fellow that we've worked with a few times now named Rory Sutherland, and also again extremely funny, but brilliant content in terms of really helping make effectively behavioral economics understandable and help you appreciate, why that's an important topic and how you can use it in real life. Another one that pops to mind, it was probably our most downloaded talk ever, is from a designer named Errol Balkan. And what Errol does in his talk is that he's a designer, and designers, as you know, bring this different perspective, this different lens on the world. And he, again, with great comedy, points out both examples of great design, design that he says makes you feel like a superhero, and then terrible design, that brings you down and to depress you, completely unnecessary. And even what he would argue is criminal design, where it's almost actively trying to get you to make bad choices to the benefit of the organization that's behind the technology. So those three pop to mind. There are obviously many, many more that I could name, but yeah. It's been, it's one of the great pleasures getting to research these folks and recruit them to this part of the world.